This young boy is having his head shaved as punishment for getting in trouble during his first week at school. As you can see, this is devastating for him, traumatic even. He's not alone either, there are many videos like it online, especially on short-form video platforms like TikTok. Children aren't just punished by having their head shaved, but also by having their humiliation broadcast to the world. If the punishers, normally the parents, are to be believed, this is done purely to dissuade the child from misbehaving again, and is a necessary evil, done for the child's own good. These videos aren't always real, or at least I can't guarantee they are, but they do implicitly encourage other parents to do the same. As many people in the comments point out, this raises questions about whether this constitutes abuse, especially as the digital world is hugely important to children and adolescents, with many of them already experiencing cyberbullying from their peers. For many parents, sharing their children's childhood online has become second nature in what's known as sharenting, described by expert Stacy Steinberg as what parents do when they talk about their children outside the family circle. A post on social media with a picture, a blog post about their child, a video through a messaging platform like WhatsApp, etc. But at what point does depriving a child of their right to privacy become punishment in itself? Let's get into it. The internet has a rich history of humiliating people, especially children. One of the earliest examples is Star Wars Kid, a 2-minute long video of Jelaine Raza, a 15-year-old high school student from Quebec, playing with a golf ball retriever like a lightsaber, specifically in the style of Darth Maul in Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. At the time of its upload, April 2003, video sharing sites had yet to become widely available, and so it was shared via peer-to-peer networks like LimeWire, a means of directly sharing files over the internet. At the time, there were much fewer internet users than there are now, but there was also less content, meaning that the internet users that did exist were more likely to see it. This, of course, resulted in extreme amounts of bullying and ridicule, with Jelaine eventually leaving school and losing friends. On the internet, there are no limits. It was poison. Though he never considered suicide, he couldn't help but feel worthless. It was a very dark period for him. A couple of years later, in 2005, an incident known as Dog Poop Girl would take place in South Korea. A woman's dog pooped on the subway, with her making no effort to clean it up, despite insistence from those nearby. The footage was shared online and quickly drew outrage from strangers in what the Washington Post described at the time as a test of the internet's power to shame. Incidents like these would occur with increasing regularity as video sharing platforms like YouTube exploded in popularity. In September 2007, Cara Cunningham, who formerly went by the stage name Chris Crocker, would release a video commonly known as Leave Britney Alone, which would eclipse the notoriety of Star Wars Kid and Dog Poop Girl. In the video, she tearfully defends Britney Spears in response to unfavorable media coverage of her. By January 2009, it had 24 million views and 350,000 comments, making it the second most discussed video of all time on YouTube at the time. She was relentlessly mocked and satirized for the video, with a large emphasis on her appearance. But arguably, none of these people had it quite as bad as Rebecca Black, who released her debut single and music video Friday on February 2011, created by Arc Music Factory and funded by her parents. It went viral about a month later and went on to accumulate 167 million views and over 3.1 million dislikes and became YouTube's biggest video of that year. Rebecca Black experienced extreme bullying as a result, due in part to its mockery and derision by comedians and commentators, even receiving death threats. 9 years later, she described herself as having become unbelievably depressed and trapped in this body of what she thought the world would see her as forever when she hadn't even finished growing. Rebecca now has a successful hyperpop career and even did a Boiler Room set last year, so good for her. 2025 will mark the 20th anniversary of the launch of YouTube. Since then, social media's growth has been explosive. The scale of visibility of anything posted publicly now has the potential to be huge. As of October 2024, there was an estimated 5.2 billion social media users, roughly 64% of the world's population. With this vast scale comes the proportionate potential for shame and embarrassment. Millions of strangers viewing footage of you in a humiliating situation, judging you, leaving abuse in the comments. Going viral is probably an overused phrase now, seeming to refer to anything remotely popular, but the average social media user sees vastly more unique content than they did 20 years ago. This is due in part to the success of short-form video, which, through the sheer volume of content each user consumes, lowers the threshold for content going viral. Part of the effectiveness of TikTok's algorithm is the way it shows every new video to a small subset of users to assess whether to push it out to a wider audience, giving the average video more potential for virality, even if the result is videos like this popping up on your For You page. Part of TikTok's success is down to the ease of creating content on the platform, which has opened up content creation to less tech-savvy demographics, such as older people. but it's still younger users that use social media the most, often grasping its functioning in ways that older generations don't. Although research on social media use by age doesn't compare with teens, nearly half of teens say they're online constantly, and across all 5 of these platforms, 1/3 of teens use at least one of them almost constantly, with 90% saying they ever use YouTube. Social media is hugely important to many teens' lives, specifically for connecting with their friends, which is the most universal positive experience of social media among US teens. This is unsurprising given that social life is extremely important to teens, and according to a 2022 study, more than half of teens say it would be difficult for them to give up social media, despite mostly positive or neutral use. A lot of this use is problematic. According to a study by Health Behavior in School-Aged Children, HSBC, 11% of respondents engaged with social media in a problematic way in 2022, compared to 7% in 2018. Cyberbullying is a big part of this problematic use, with the University of the Sunshine Coast study finding that 98% of girls aged between 14 and 19 had experienced cyberbullying. Cyberbullying often involves the sharing of content about others without consent, normally videos that aim to humiliate the subject and, as is typical for bullying of all types, punish them for deviating from the norm. These can easily and quickly go beyond children and adolescents of a specific local area, due in part to the way short-form video algorithms operate. As mentioned earlier, few have a better grasp of the potential for humiliation in the digital world than children and adolescents. Humiliation by their peers is bad enough, but it's now weaponized against them by adults. Perhaps its most insidious form is sextortion, wherein humiliation and embarrassment is used as a threat, using compromising images of the child or adolescent to extort money from the victim. If money or more images and videos aren't shared with the perpetrator, they threaten to share the ones already shared with their friends and family, and even frame them for criminal sex acts. This can quickly put the victim in a very dark place, as they feel isolated, mistakenly feeling like they have nobody to go to for help. This was the case for a 17-year-old British boy, Jordan, who tragically took his own life after being blackmailed with explicit photos. But it's not just criminals who weaponize humiliation against children and adolescents, even senior authority figures are guilty of this. Detroit Judge Kenneth King was one such authority figure who, in August 2024, yelled at a 15-year-old girl visiting his courtroom on a field trip and sent her to the court's jail cell, where he forced her to change into a jail jumpsuit alone, before demanding she return to the courtroom in handcuffs and beg for leniency. Her peers struggled to contain their laughter as they voted on her fate. This is in itself a humiliating incident that should have never happened, but it was made all the worse by its circulation as a viral video. The judge was removed from the docket and underwent training but was seemingly remorseless, describing his actions as his own version of scared straight and that he hadn't been disrespected like that in a very long time. Perhaps most tragically though, it's often the parents doing the humiliating. Hair shaving is one of the worst examples of this, with a long history as a symbol of subordination, even outside the parent-child relationship, such as punishment for adultery in Iran. This was an alarmingly common punishment for children even pre-social media, as these TikToks suggest, and it's now become a punishment broadcast by parents on the internet. The earliest example I could find was a Washington Post report from 2015, which reported on an Atlanta, Georgia barbershop that offered the Benjamin Button Special, a free-of-charge service to parents seeking a novel form of juvenile discipline. Its owner, Russell Frederick, shared that the cut had grown in popularity after the practice began being shared on social media. With the advent of short-form video and social media saturation, these videos have greater reach than ever, and they make for devastating viewing. This is, of course, devastating for children and teens who are notoriously self-conscious about their appearance, especially if they've been given a deliberately unflattering haircut. This is cruel in itself, let alone when broadcast to millions of strangers, which inevitably exacerbates the trauma. Of course, not all punishments shared on social media are quite as severe, such as forcing the child to go door to door with a written apology to neighbours for playing around people's cars. Unlike head shaving, there's a direct connection between the punishment and the behaviour. Most would probably consider this a lot more humane than head shaving. But why share this punishment on social media anyway? This only introduces an element of humiliation to the punishment, which isn't just wrong, but questionable in its effectiveness. According to Andy Grogan-Kaler, an associate professor of social work at the University of Michigan, the research is pretty clear that it's never appropriate to shame a child or make a child feel degraded or diminished, potentially leading to all kinds of problems in the future, including increased anxiety, depression, and aggression. Instead, parents should use other discipline strategies, such as setting clear rules for kids and taking away privileges. Overall, parents should aim to create a supporting environment for their child. When you disconnect from a child, he no longer wants to please you. He no longer wants to be like you. You've lost your power of influence over him. Children who are punished in these ways usually still commit the behavior, but do it behind their parents' backs. But for parents who share footage of their children's humiliating punishment online, is discipline actually the primary motivation anyway? Adults aren't immune to the same desire for validation as young people. The likes and comments of approval can be intoxicating, as well as the desire to present themselves as a tough parent and as having a model family. Family channels are obviously a prime example of this, vlogging their daily lives and heavily involving their children in their content. A tragic, high-profile example of this is 8 Passengers, a channel ran by Ruby Frank, which showed life with her husband and 6 children, peaking at 2.5 million subscribers in 2020. Disciplining her children was a big part of the channel, often in humiliating ways. A few examples include laughing at their son's private texts, making their young daughter responsible for packing her own lunch, prompting a concerned text from the teacher, and even hoping that nobody gives her food, threatening to cut the head off her daughter's toy, haircutting as a punishment, and even banning their son from his bedroom, making him sleep on his beanbag for 7 months. The pattern of abuse would alarm viewers, and in August 2023, this would culminate in Ruby Frank's arrest, with distressing body cam footage showing children being rescued from the home she shared with her YouTube partner, Jody Hildebrandt. Frank's 12-year-old son, visibly emaciated and with open wounds and duct tape on his limbs, escaped through a window of Hildebrandt's home and sought help at a nearby house, asking for food and water. Emergency responders later found Frank's 10-year-old daughter inside the home, also suffering from severe malnutrition. Both children were transported to a hospital where the boy was treated for extreme malnutrition and deep lacerations from being tied up with rope. In December of that same year, Ruby would plead guilty to 4 counts of aggravated child abuse. The humiliation of children sometimes isn't even under the guise of discipline though, with YouTuber DaddyOFive being one of the most high-profile examples of this. The channel has already been documented extensively, so I'll keep it short in case you're already familiar with the harrowing details. The channel featured the usual vlog-style content typical of family channels, ultimately peaking at 750,000 subscribers and 176 million views before it was terminated in 2018 for community guidelines violations. There was a large focus on pranks, becoming progressively more extreme over time, involving physical injuries and emotional torment. Attention to the channel exploded after Philip DeFranco released several videos exposing the parents' abuse, such as falsely accusing their sons, Cody and Alex, of spilling invisible ink to the point of extreme emotional distress. The clips make for extremely distressing watching and a very cut and dry child abuse. Ultimately, they were both charged with neglect of a minor in 2017. While they pled guilty, it was via an Alford plea, which denies wrongdoing but accepts the sentence. There are parents who have healthy relationships with their children and share those relationships online, including the kind of discipline that's approved by childcare professionals. They're loving and act in what they believe to be the child's best interests. This might even be most family channels, but the spoils of success, such as money and fame, make it difficult to be honest with ourselves. And the more personal incentive there is for a parent, the more likely it becomes that a child's true best interests are rationalized away. Even in the best case scenario, children are deprived of their right to privacy, either because they don't understand the implications of having their life shared online, or because they feel unable to speak up, or their parents simply don't give them the option. TikTok Live has become something of a frontline in this area, with endless live streams of parents and kids often showing them getting ready for school each day, or even opening their presents on Christmas morning. These streams can pull in thousands of viewers, the vast majority of whom the parents don't know. They could literally be anyone. The kitchen becomes a live streaming studio with the parent front and center, responding to comments and thanking the audience for gifts, while answering questions about their children. It's difficult to imagine what it's like growing up with your mornings live streamed to strangers and a limited to non-existent understanding of what those strangers are interested in and capable of. Children have no choice but to trust their parents have their best interests at heart, and, as we've seen, that's not always the case. We like to think that parents won't rationalize the mistreatment of their children in the face of the income that sharing online can bring, but as we've seen time and time again, this happens far too often. Maybe it's time we stopped sharenting altogether and gave children the right to privacy until they fully understand the implications of forfeiting it. But what do you think? Shaving a child's head is obviously a cruel punishment, but should parents be sharing their kids' lives online at all, or do the benefits sometimes outweigh the negatives? Drop a comment down below and hit those like and subscribe buttons. I release a new video every couple of weeks. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.